it's me again, Lauren, and today I'm going to teach you how to make this beachfront sunset sent in to me by Katie Seeley. So some things you're going to need is something to paint on. I use wood because I like the smooth texture. You can get this wood plaque from Michael's for $1.99. It's just a flat piece of wood in the wood section. You'll also need some brushes. I also get mine at Michael's. And today we're using acrylic paint because acrylic paint dissolves in water. It's a little bit easier to work with for some of my beginning painters. I use Reeves that you can get at Michael's and Chromacro. And optional is some of the things I use for the Ferris wheel details, those teeny tiny areas. I use a Copic multiliner pen and a white gel pen, but those are optional. You can paint without it. So let's go ahead and get started. I always like working with pictures that I have a personal connection to. This one's from Katie Seeley. So first step, you have to sand your wood and prime it. You have to sand to make sure the texture is nice and smooth. If you're working with a canvas, I still recommend sanding it to try and get that smooth texture. Clear off any dust and debris from the sanding. Then I prime with gloss medium. You can use gesso, you can use matte medium. I just find it creates a nice smooth surface and it doesn't allow the paint to soak in as much. If you don't prime your wood, the paint will soak into the wood and it'll drive you nuts. So paint it to a nice smooth surface. And now we are ready to get started. So these are the colors we're going to be using today. Again, we're working with acrylic, which is soluble in water. So I have a dark blue, regular blue, light blue, then I have a yellow and orange, a lot of white, and this is Payne's gray. It is not black. I never want to use just straight black in a painting. It's too vacuous. Always mix a little blue into it or use a Payne's gray. And brushes, you'll need brushes too, and water. So we'll start off by mixing up a light yellow for the base of the sunset, and then we'll add a little bit of orange in there. Make it nice and warm, adding some white. That'll make it more opaque as well. And I'm using a flat, wide brush because I'm going to fill in a very large area. And I want to make horizontal strokes and going back and forth to kind of feather it in, blend it in. Well, there's nothing to blend yet, but covering the space. So a flat, wide brush is usually what I recommend to fill in large areas that you want to have a sort of uniform color to. Now I'm going to rinse off that brush so I can get some light blue. And again, it's soluble in water, so you don't need any paint thinner for this. Now I'm going to grab some of my light blue, a little bit of that orangey yellow, add some white in there. And I'm going to add that on top of that orange that I just put on there. So horizontal brush strokes, and notice how I'm going to go right on top of that orange that I just put on there. I want my paint to blend. I want it to look like it's fading into one another. Now I'm going to mix up a little bit of a darker blue, adding some of my medium blue in there. And I'm painting right on top of that existing light blue, and what I teach my kids is something called feathering. So as I'm going into that area that is already painted, I'm just very lightly touching my brush to my canvas or my wood and just swishing it back and forth kind of quickly, and that helps to blend your area together. Here goes my light blue on top, and again, blend, 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 blendy, 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 blend, blend, blend. Be sure you're going on top of your colors and working in horizontal brush strokes and blending those colors together with very quick, feathery, light brush strokes. Bringing it all the way down so it has a nice smooth fade. And get any corners that you missed, because clearly I did. Now we're mixing up a dark blue. We're going into the water at the bottom. So I had some of my dark blue, some of my Payne's gray. What I want you to notice is when I paint the horizon line, notice the change in my brush stroke. I want my brush to be almost perpendicular to the edge, which is contrary to how we might think of making a straight line, but that gives me more control and helps prevent any flyaways from the bristle hairs as I'm dragging that line across for the horizon. Over here, I've added just a little bit of Payne's gray to my dark blue for this darker edge where the pier is going to be. So what I'm doing now is mixing up my own brown for the mountains in the back. So we're going to use some yellow, some orange, some blue, and some Payne's gray. Pretty much all of our colors we're going to mix together to make our own rich brown. We want a dark brown and we want a light brown as well. So I'm going to mix up that. Then I'm going to grab some white, mix up some light brown, and then we're going to do our mountains. Well, our islands that are in the back. So the further away island mountains are going to be a lighter color because of atmospheric perspective. So start with your light brown for the mountains in the back. And you want your edges to be crisp and clean, so be sure you're working slowly with your brush. Make sure there's lots of paint on there. Your edges should be organic but still crisp. Now we got our dark brown that we're putting for the island mountains in the front. There's a hair on my brush. Could be from the 2 dogs that I live with. Be sure to keep an even horizon line, that you're maintaining an even line at the bottom of your mountains. Alrighty, I've mixed up a little bit of a darker brown. I put a lot of Payne's gray into it. We're adding the pier in, so you want it to come in at an angle from the left side. These are the buildings that go on top of the pier. Now we need the pier legs, and what I'm using is a small rounded brush. Just adding in the legs of my pier, coming into the water. Now I'm mixing up a dark blue. We're going to add some shadows into our ocean, make it look like we have some waves going on. So I'm going to start underneath the pier, so where the pier legs come into the water, I'm going to add some shadows so it looks like it's interacting with the water, that it's reflecting the pier. And I'm doing these short little horizontal like brush strokes. That's going to give me the idea of water. You don't want them to be vertical. Your water would look very weird. So horizontal little choppy brush strokes. You want them to look uneven. You want them to look mismatched so that it looks more natural, like ocean. So what I'm adding here are waves. They look like little upside down McDonald's birds, like little inverted V's to make it look like waves across the sea. Now we're going to mix up a light blue, so adding some white to our light blue for some highlights on our ocean. Again, we're using a small rounded brush for these tiny details. And I'm kind of speckling them in the middle. You want to focus your highlights. You don't want to overdo it, otherwise it won't be extra sparkly. And here I am overdoing it. And again. And here I'm overdoing it again. And a little bit more because I like sparkles. Sparkle, sparkle, sparkle. Sparkly, sparkly, sparkly. Sparkle, sparkle, sparkle. Now we're going to start adding in some of the lights on the pier, so I'm mixing up a yellow and a white together. It's kind of hard to see on my videos, so sorry. I'll get better at this in the future, I promise. Back to this thing. So now I'm just adding some of the rounded light details, so it looks like there is some action happening on our pier. And if you'd like your pier to be abandoned, please avoid the yellow lights. Next thing I'm using is a Copic multiliner pen for the Ferris wheel. So if I use this brush, it's not going to look so good, so I'm using a pen instead, and I outlined in pencil first. I used to use micron pens back in the day, and then I discovered Copic multiliners, and I gotta say I'm in love. I just find that it gives a crisper, cleaner line, and I know that there's some painting enthusiasts and elitists who'll say, well, now it's no longer a painting, but you know what? It's my sunset, and I like it. And you can keep using a brush if you're feeling like a purist. You can use whatever materials you feel is best. If you have a ballpoint pen, go for it. So please enjoy my struggle as I try to make a perspective circle using my Copic multiliner pen. Struggle, struggle, struggle. Struggle, struggle, struggle. Struggle. What I decided to use next was my Tombow pen, Tombow, to fill in some of those larger areas and to give some thicker lines. So I've grabbed one of my thinner Copic multiliner pens, a size 0.3, to fill in some of the tinier details, some of the fixtures that attach the buckets to the Ferris wheel. Now I'm using a uniball white gel pen for the highlights and the sparkles. And if you want to use just regular white paint, you are welcome to, and if you want to leave this part out, you can. Yellow gel pen to add some more lighting details to my pier, to my Ferris wheel. Now I'm mixing up a lighter yellow again to add some reflections to those lights that we have, give them And you want it to look a little faded, so it looks like it's fading away, like light. Can't forget our flag at the end of the pier, so I got my tiny 0.3 copic multiliner to grab my flag on there. Add my light poles in there as well. I'm going to pick my white gel pen back up to add some of those light details on the end of my light pole. And voila! Here goes our beachside sunset pic. And that's it! You've wrapped up your sunset. My name is Lauren. I'm a high school art teacher from Houston, Texas. I would love to see the creations you made. Leave me a comment if you enjoyed the video, and I will be sending you more videos soon. Bye!